Great having everybody here this morning. It's great having our travelers back safely. We do miss you when you're gone. Not just them, everybody. We miss you when you're gone. I mentioned last week that was going to be the last of our Finding Our Purpose in Life sermons. But I was trying to find something else for this week. And I just happened to look at one of the first lessons I did back in '99 when I was preaching over at Kashmir, and it went along with this lesson. And so I brought it back to life and changed a few things, and that's what we're going to look at this morning. It's other verses dealing with heaven, okay? And we're going to talk about that a little bit deeper. Like I said, 2 weeks ago, we looked at the scriptures dealing with having a purpose in life, and that purpose was heaven. Then last week, we looked at the scriptures dealing with how we get to heaven. Well, today, I want us to look at scriptures dealing with our daily lives and our attitude. Scriptures dealing with what heaven is like. These parables that we're going to look at do not describe heaven but more of an attitude that we should have in obtaining heaven. And so that's what we're going to look at, 6 parables that Jesus spoke about or preached. In Matthew 13 is where we're going to be at today, for the most part. If you go back the first 23 verses here in Matthew 13, which I encourage you to go back and read, Jesus starts this chapter talking about the sower and the different soils that are represented in that parable. And he goes on to answer the disciples' questions. They asked him, why do you speak in parables? Why do you speak like this? And he explained to them why he did. Well, then he turns around in one of the few places and explains that parable to his disciples and what it meant. And we're going to pick up that story here in verse 24. Another parable, because he's already talked about one. He put forth to them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like. Okay? And we're going to see this 6 times total. What the kingdom of heaven is like. First one is, he sowed good seed, a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. Tares are weeds, more or less, okay? And when the grain had sprouted and produced a crop, then the tares also appeared. So the servants of the owner came and said to him, Sir, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have tares? Now, this is a scripture that comes home to me, and it should come home to you. It should sound familiar. You know, if you go west or south out of Spokane, you're going to run into wheat fields, and they finally have got them all harvested. But it's gorgeous when driving down 27 and seeing all these hills of golden grain, especially when the wind is blowing, and they're just waving. But some fields, you can see along the edges mostly, these green tares, these green weeds sticking up through the wheat, okay? That is what Jesus is referring to here, of how the sower has planted his crop, but here's all these weeds coming up, okay? Well, again, in this parable, Jesus describes it. But he goes on in this parable. He said to them, an enemy has done this. The servant said to him, do you want us to go then and gather them up? But he said, no, lest while you gather up the tares, you also uproot the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest, and at the end of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, first gather together the tares and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. Okay? And remember, this is what heaven is like. And again, Jesus is going to explain to us what this parable means. Verse 36. Do you remember what a parable is? A parable is an earthly story that is easy for the listeners to understand, but it has a heavenly meaning. Okay? And this parable, all parables are like that, but this is a good example of that earthly story with a heavenly meaning. Verse 36. Then Jesus sent the multitude away and went into the house, and his disciples came to him, saying, "Explain to us the parable of the tares of the field." Why? They didn't understand it. They might understand the earthly story, but they're not understanding that earthly meaning. Jesus answered and said to them, "He who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seeds are the sons of the kingdom, but the tares are the sons of the wicked one," being the devil. "The enemy who sowed them is the devil, and the harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are the angels." Jesus told a story or parable that his listeners could understand, but they didn't understand the heavenly meaning or reference. Not even the disciples understood it. So the wheat is the sons of the kingdom. Who are they? They are Christians. The tares that are mixed in with the wheat are sons of the devil. They are followers of Satan. False teachers, false preachers, people who believe a different salvation or a different path than what is taught in the Bible. The harvest is the second coming of Christ, and the angels will do the separation of the good from the saved, from the followers of the devil. Okay? This is what the kingdom of heaven is going to be like. At the end of time, there is going to be this separation. It was so funny this morning when we left town. There's a little, not a farm, but a house that's got a horse and some animals and everything. And in this one pen, they had some goats, and there's one sheep, and I've never even noticed the sheep I've always seen the goats. And there's 3 goats standing by themselves, and the sheep was standing by itself. You know, and Kathy's made a comment, says, "Well, there's the sheep being divided from the goats." You know, I said, well, that's going to come in handy later, you know, because that's what other scriptures that we read about are the sheep being separated from the goats. The sheep going to heaven representing the Christians, and the goats representing those following the devil, and they go to hell. And my lesson just went away. Give me just a second. Hold that thought. Let me see where I'm at here. Oh, yes. There it is. Sorry about that. Sometimes the screen, I just touch one little thing and it goes berserk on me. Okay. Verse 40. Okay. Continue on in verse 40, we read the conclusion of the story. "Therefore, as the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of this age. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and those who practice lawlessness." And we've talked about this. It's not that just that you've sinned, but you practice. That is, you're doing it all the time. Verse 42, "And will cast them into the furnace of fire. There will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears to hear, let him hear." The tares are the followers of Satan, will be separated from the saved and will be cast in the fires of hell. These are the ones who offend Jesus, who practice lawlessness. We have studied this idea. They are individuals who live outside of Christ. They are ones who bring division to the Lord's body to get their own way. Their way doesn't follow the scriptures, but instead follows their own way of doing things. But the righteous, those who do the will of God will shine forth as the sun in heaven. Do you have ears? Jesus states that we need to listen to what it is he is telling us. The next parable deals with the mustard tree. The plant is classified by horticulturalists as an evergreen shrub. The mustard tree reaches a height of about 20 feet and can be as wide as it is tall. The leaves are oval, starting out as dark green and progressing to a light green as the tree ages. The flowers are green or yellow and are found in long tendrils. The fruit of the tree is purple, which you see in this top left-hand photo, and sometimes they're purple or pink. Now, when I looked up what a mustard tree looked like, as you can see, it comes up with several different varieties, and they all said mustard tree. So I don't know if they all are, if one is, or whatever, but we know that it grows up. It's one of the tiniest seeds, but it grows up to be a tree. We're the biggest or largest herb plant. So let's go on. Matthew 13, verse 31 and 32. Another parable Jesus put forth to them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is the least of all the seeds, they're the tiniest, as you just saw, and sowed in his field, but when it is grown, it is greater than the herbs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and nest in its branches. Another parable of what the kingdom of heaven is like. Now, the only mustard seed I've ever seen is in a Bible bookstore, and they're usually like in a heart with a glass center, and there'll be a little seed in it. Okay? And that's how I've seen them. The seed is about the size of a head of a needle. Here, Jesus is telling us that heaven is like that seed. It might be small to start with, but it becomes larger than anything else in our lives. Just like the mustard seed becomes larger than any other herb plants. The mustard tree becomes a safe haven for the birds of the air. They come and rest and nest in its branches. Heaven is that same type of safe haven for us. Heaven starts out as a small part of our lives when we first become a Christian. I remember, as a teenager, when I was baptized, I think when I was 10, and yes, I was a Christian, but it didn't overpower my life. But now that I've grown older, Christianity is more in my life than anything else. Just like that mustard seed started off small and grows up to a large bush or tree, so does our Christianity. And that is what the kingdom of heaven is like. Our Christianity should give us that same comfort, rest, and peace. Verse 33, another parable he spoke to them. The kingdom of heaven is like leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of meal till it was all leavened. Now, I'm not a big fancy cook, but I know how to cook enough to keep me alive if I had to, okay? And I've never baked anything like this with dough and where you mix in leaven and flour and whatever, eggs, whatever it is you mix up to, like I said, I don't know how to bake, okay? Box, add water, milk, okay, I can do that, But I understand that leaven is needed when you're doing it from scratch to make the dough rise, to make something out of it. If you don't put leaven in it, you end up with pancakes, okay? I'm assuming. But leaven is used to make more out of this lump, makes it larger. By doing this, the leaven spread into all the meal and was used to cook several loaves of bread instead of just one. And a lot of times, this is what they talk to it about a meal. That's what they had was bread. They didn't have meat and vegetables and desserts and everything else like we do today. So that was their meal. Likewise, we as Christians should be spreading the word of God. In Mark 16:15, we read, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature." Okay? We should not take our Christianity and hide it under a bushel basket. We should be sharing it. It should be growing. That is what heaven is about. It's not just you. It's about spreading God's love to everybody else. Verses 13 through 16. Matthew 5, verses 13 through 16. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled under the foot of men. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, that it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. Now, I've never had salt that had lost its flavor. Okay? But, you take salt and it's lost its flavor, it's nothing. It's salt, it's sand. Toss it out. Okay? And that's what Jesus is talking about, Christians who have lost their flavor, who have lost their Christianity, who are not doing what they should be doing as a Christian. And then he turns right around and talks about the light, that we have to let our light shine. Okay? This is what heaven is about. And we as Christians need to remember that. The next one, verse 44. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and hid, and for joy over it, he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field so that he could have this great treasure, whatever it was, that he found in that field. Has anyone ever found something of great value? Maybe you collect stamps, or maybe you collect coins, and you find that one rare coin. It's like, I think I've shared the story before. Kathy and I, we went up to Massachusetts with my parents, and my dad had brought all these antique books of different kinds of antiques, and I was sitting up in front for 2 days just reading through them. And there's one about occupied Japan, the pottery made in occupied Japan that stamped that from after the war. And I had just been flipping through it and everything. And we stopped at this one yard sale up in Massachusetts, I think it was. And they had tables after tables after tables in this big circle with all kinds of mugs, coffee mugs. And I'm not a coffee drinker, and it's like, yeah, whatever. So Kathy was, going around. She was looking for something and whatever. And I saw one, and I grabbed it, and I hid it. And I ran over, and I paid the lady a quarter, which is what she was wanting for all of the mugs. And Kathy's like, what is it? It's like, nothing, and nothing, get away from me. And so we get in the car, and I grab that Occupied Japan book, and I flip through it, and sure enough, I had found one. And it was it's like a barrel, and the handle is the cowboy, okay? And it was like, yes, and it had it ready for like $25, and I paid a quarter for it. So there's my treasure. I looked it up yesterday on eBay, and they're like $22 now. So it's held its value for the most part. But to me, the first time finding one like that, I saw it in a book, and then to find it, it was a great find. Okay, so precious to us that we are willing, that Jesus telling us that heaven is like finding a valued treasure, that is so precious that we're willing to give up anything, everything, to have it. We're probably not that willing to sell everything we own, our cars, our furniture, our house, to buy one particular item. But that's what Jesus is saying here, that heaven is like you find something so exciting that you're willing to do that. Heaven is that to us as Christians, that we should be willing to give up anything that's going to keep us from reaching heaven. And we're going to look at it here in a few minutes. Family, friends, job, whatever it is, if it's keeping us from heaven, we should be willing to get rid of it. Heaven should mean that much that we're willing to move on. 34 through 39. Matthew 10, verses 34 through 39. Do not think that I have come to bring peace on earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a man's enemies will be those of his own household. Jesus himself said, I did not come to bring peace. Because somebody wants to become a Christian, but maybe their family does not believe in God. And it sets son against father, family member against a family member. Or maybe it's a different religion, Christianity, than what the family believes in. That was the case with my mother. And they wouldn't talk to her. So are you willing to give up family and friends who go against you because you're wanting to become a Christian? That's what heaven is like. That you must be willing to give up anything to achieve heaven. 37, he who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me, and he who does not take his cross and follow after me, he is not worthy of me. He who finds his life will lose it, and he who loses his life for my sake will find it. Again, you could have that family life that is so dear to you, that means everything to you, that has been all you've known. Are you willing to give that up for heaven? Are you willing to give up friends for heaven? Are you willing to give up a job for heaven? That's what heaven is about. That's what heaven is like. That is what Jesus is referring to here. I'm sorry, I didn't advance it. My wife didn't clear her throat. She doesn't have a throat problem. When she clears her throat, she's telling me I didn't advance it. When I was growing up in church, a teenager, my mother would clear her throat. And it was like, okay, I'm talking, I'm misbehaving, I need to straighten up. You know, when we got married and I went to church, Kathy was sitting there and we were, sitting up with some friends. And my mother cleared her throat and I straightened up. And the church laughed, because they knew that was a sign for me to straighten. But here I am married with my wife and everything. And my mother cleared her throat because she was clearing it, but I straightened up. So things in your head. Jesus is telling us that we should be willing to give up anything to reach heaven. What is more important? Family for a short term here on this earth, or a home in heaven for an eternity? Verse 45. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant seeking beautiful pearls, who, when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had to buy this one pearl. The kingdom of heaven is like this. Do you collect anything? I mentioned stamps and coins. You can collect antiques. Kathy and I love antiques. I grew up with antiques. And so there's a few things that we've collected through the years and ended up it was nothing and sold it. My mother gave me a carnival bowl, a tumbler, when I was a teenager. I don't know why she did, but they're iridescent, and we'll see some pictures here in a minute. And so I started collecting carnival glass through the years. Didn't have money to spend on it. Carnival glass is usually high expensive, and so I bought just a few pieces every now and then when I could find it. But I like carnival glass, but not to the point that I'm willing to sell my car in order to buy it. Okay? Antique store there in Latah, he's got a beautiful bowl, a carnival bowl with the mugs that go with it. And I love it. But I'm not paying the price just to set it on a shelf. Okay? But Jesus is saying the kingdom of heaven to us should, again, be worth us giving up what we need to that might be holding us back, that might be causing us to sin, anything in our life that's going to keep us from heaven. We must be willing to give it up to reach that great price of heaven. This is what carnival glass looks like for those of you who might not know what it is. Some of you your parents might have had a piece or two of it that they had collected through the years. But these last two verses, or two parables in verses 44, 45, and 46, Jesus is telling us that we should be willing to give up everything to gain heaven. Define anything or everything. And it's anything that is wrong, whether it is behavior, whether it is attitude, whether it is family, whether it is friend, whether it is anything that can keep us from heaven. That's our goal. That's our purpose. We must be willing to give up anything for that. Carnival glass gets its name because back in whatever years, 20s, 30s, whatever, it was a cheap glass. And it was, when you went to a carnival and you won a prize, whatever, they would give you carnival glass. And that's how it got its name. A lot of it was plates, like you see in the center. I don't know if the lights, you can really see it that well. And it would be stamped with Niagara Falls, or it would be stamped with the carnival's name or something like that. Or there'd be little animals that they would give out as prizes to help promote the carnival or just whatever. But people liked it and everything, and then it became a business, and now there's several factories out there that make it to this day. But it's gorgeous. I have a vase like this top left one. Mine's about 16 inches tall. I bought it in an antique store up north, and it's fluted on the sides, and it's called a funeral vase. And it's rare because of how tall it is. Again, the tumbler I was talking about, mine's a marigold, kind of like the top right color. But that's what my mother gave me that got me started in it. Okay? But I don't expect, that me showing you this, that this is going to cause you to want to go out and buy it. You might be interested in it and buy some books and look at it and go to antique stores and all. But this is just an example of, something that you might want and what you're willing to give up. Maybe, you're not going to have coffee every day. So that you can save up some money to buy a piece of it. We talked about going on vacation to where you're willing to give up some things so that you can have money so that you have a good vacation. That's earthly. That's worldly. We're talking about heavenly. And what are you willing to give up to make it to heaven? Verse 47, our last parable and our last scripture this morning. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a dragnet. Those of you who are not fishermen, those of you who have not fished in the ocean or large bodies of water, I'm sure we've seen some, like when tuna, it's a big net that they would drag behind a boat. I grew up on the Gulf, and we had several different types of nets. My dad had mullet fish, and he had a cast net that was round that he would throw out. And he'd do maybe a 20-foot circle and pull it in. As kids, we had a seine net that was about 3 foot high with 2 poles on it. Could be 10, 12, 20 foot long. And you would walk out into the seaweed, and you would seine it and bring it up on the beach. And you would catch everything. Depending on the size of the holes, depends on what you catch. If it's a small hole, you catch everything. If the holes are larger, the smaller fish will go out, and you keep the bigger fish. And so that's what he's talking about here, being a dragnet. And that was cast into the sea and gathered some of every kind. You can't say, well, I'm just going after tuna and get just tuna. You're going to gather all the fish of every kind. Which, verse 48, which when it was full, they drew to shore and they sat down and gathered the good fish into vessels and threw the bad away. We would do that. We'd keep all the shrimp and throw everything else out. Dad would collect the mullet and then throw all the other fish out. Maybe we'd grab a crab or two and keep that, but that was a good fish. Okay? And that's what Jesus is saying here. You gather the good and throw out the bad. Verse 49, so it will be at the end of the age. The angels, which we've already seen, will come forth, separate the wicked from among the just, and cast them into the furnace of fire. There will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Jesus said to them, have you understood all these things? One simple word for what Jesus is describing here is the judgment. By then, it is too late. There will be no excuses taken. There will not be any more time given for you to change things in your life. What is done is done. You will not have the opportunity to change anything. You do still have time to change your life this morning. You do have time to change things in your life that might be causing you to not reach heaven, our goal. And that's what we need to look at in our life. This lesson was heaven is like, or kingdom of heaven is like. And gave us examples of what it is that we need to be doing as Christians. And what is it worth to you? Are you willing to make those sacrifices of worldly things to reach our heavenly goal of heaven? That's what we need to look at. That's what we need to talk about. That's what we need to think about. Our purpose in life is heaven. Should be. And are we willing to take the steps to reach that goal? Are we making the sacrifices we need to make it to heaven? If there's any way that we can help you this morning, let us know. If you need prayers and encouragement, we are here to help you. Let us know what we can do as a family. Maybe you haven't put Christ on in baptism, and that's something that you need to do. Let us know what we can do to help you reach that goal of heaven as we stand and sing.